Welcome to the Permanent Change of Station podcast, a place where friends can come together, agree or disagree, and still be friends. Join hosts Lynette and Brenda each week as they discuss topics they've been covering since their days as Army brats living in Germany. No matter the issue, these friends believe it's time for a permanent change of station.
Hey, it's Lynette and Brenda back for another episode of Permanent Change of Station. This particular episode, we wanted to touch upon the topic of mental health. I think it's been a topic for so long. It has been stigmatized that people who struggle with mental health issues are often, forced to kind of keep it on the DL. But as we see more and more people come out and talk about their mental health challenges, that I think that stigma is starting to dissipate somewhat. Everyone from the Olympic athlete, Simone Biles, who said, hey, I'm not going to compete because, I mentally can't deal with that right now. And of course, I am very acutely aware of the trauma and grief that rippled throughout the pageant world when it was announced that Chesley Christ, who was a former Miss USA, a very competent young attorney in her own right in New York City, went to the top floor of her apartment building and took a leap and committed suicide. I think that when someone like that in the public sphere, who so many perceive as having it all, she had educational success, she was gorgeous, she not only had a successful law practice, but also had taken on the role after becoming Miss USA as being a national correspondent for different entities, but yet there was something going on behind closed doors that I don't think I or anyone else really would think would be going on. And so it was a topic that I know I've had many conversations on various Facebook groups, including the Miss America fan page. There's been a lot of discussion about this, and many people have shared their own struggle. I shared mine on my Facebook page, where I had gone through a period in 2006 where I was going through an election in which my political opponents were having me follow because they allege I didn't live where I said I lived. And that also had a psychological impact on my son, who was a young boy, at the time. He was wanting to know if people were following us at any given time. I was going through a divorce. It was just and the Las Vegas media was vicious. I, as I've written in my own book, that when I was going through this whole drama in Las Vegas back in 2006, 2007 time frame, that I will forever be grateful that O.J. Simpson got arrested in Las Vegas, because he literally knocked me off the front page when he did his thing. But if you can imagine just constantly being just publicly skewered. And I was literally pushed to the edge, where I can tell you that I never noticed, and I had lived in Las Vegas for like 12, 13 years at that point. I never noticed the ads, those billboards on the bus stops and on billboards for gun shows. But all of a sudden, they became like I couldn't not see them. It was like I was seeing it everywhere.
Did you know at the time, were you becoming aware that you were?
Yes, I knew that I was getting, I was in a very dark period. The technical term is that you're having suicidal ideation, because you're starting to think about, okay, what are the ways I could kill myself? Okay, I could go to a gun store and I could shoot myself. I could possibly do the carbon monoxide in the garage. You just start thinking of these options. But go ahead.
And then were you able to
Well, what helped
turn the
me,
corner?
and again, I tell this, I'm a big believer that everybody's got a struggle. Okay. I don't care who you are, what you do, what your economic station is. Everyone's got some kind of struggle. And if you don't believe so, that's your struggle, that you believe you don't have a struggle. Right. Okay.
Oh, I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
In fact, I will say this, Lynette. At work, we've been talking about the COVID fatigue and, trying to keep the morale up and this and that. And it's always like the leadership team saying, how are we going to help our employees? And I said, how are we going to help each other out? Because we're all struggling at varying levels. You can't sit here and say the last 2 years haven't impacted you. And prior to that, you probably had other impacts, in your life weighing on you. So you're
So
right.
for me,
And it's
back
just being able to talk
in
about it.
2007, what was literally my saving grace, and I use those words specifically, saving grace, was that I had befriended a young lady who was a survivor of, and she was my age, who had been the survivor of sex trafficking. So her trauma was a totally different situation than mine. She had been kidnapped as a teenager and forced into prostitution in Las Vegas and was able to escape that situation. But how she got out was that one of her fellow, prostitutes had been killed by her John. So one of her best friends had been murdered by her prostitution customer, and we, call them Johns. And so my friend thought of taking her own life at that point. And she, earlier that week, there had been some, female pastors from the International Church of Las Vegas that had gone down around Industrial Road, and all these places where, prostitutes are usually found in Las Vegas, and had passed out some cards and said, hey, we can help you get out of this life. And when she literally thought of taking her own life, she remembered those cards, and she remembered those women who said, hey, we're here to help you when you want to get out of this life. And she reached out to them. And that's what had saved her life, is that she reached out to someone. And she had spent, many years, and she has testified in front of the legislature of the state of Nevada, and passing legislation and all kinds of stuff in the years that have come after, this situation. But the fact that she had made a personal connection with me and shared her story. So when I knew that I was going through this really dark period, she was someone I knew I wasn't going to get any judgment from, and she would get it. And I called her literally late one evening, and the first thing she said, I know what you're going through, and I'm telling you, don't do it. I knew what she meant when she said those words. and it resonated with me. And of course I went and, got professional counseling for some time. And it again helped me come to a safe and stable place where it doesn't matter what other people's opinion of me is. Really, it's not my business. All I need to know is what I think about myself and what God has to say about me. And that's really been my mantra, ever since. And, when you're in the public sphere, people often dehumanize you. It's almost like they don't believe that their words can scar you, just like it would scar someone that is not in the public eye. Okay. And so I know, just reading some of the articles about this Chesley, Christ, just things that she had dealt with, online bullying or whatnot. And even I follow certain celebrities on Instagram. One of them is this country singer, Mickey Guyton. Okay. And almost daily, she's she will repost some very hateful message that someone has posted about her because they just don't like that she's in country music or whatever.
Yeah. So let's dig into that a little bit more. Public versus not being public, because with social media now, people that weren't what you consider public figures, you become
Right.
public through your social media, right? And there's so much bullying going on and mean things being said. I remember being down in Texas and getting a messenger message from a friend saying, "Hey, I don't know if you're aware, but right now there's some really mean posts going on your Facebook post about a picture you posted." And it was a picture of 4th of July fireworks or whatever. And long story short, it was unsolicited, it was mean, it was hateful, and that's where I was like, "Ooh, yeah, this doesn't feel good." Right? Like, and I think people feel free to hide behind social media because they're not face to face with you, and they just unleash words, and words
I had a
mean
situation
something and
this
they have
week on
impact.
Facebook, and that in my one of my side hustles, if you will, I do real estate investing. And the
Right.
I had a couple of properties that were under contract with one buyer. And I found out last Sunday that the buyer, and we're set to close literally in a few days. And I was notified that this buyer died unexpectedly. I think he had some health challenges, but I don't think anyone expected that, this 44-year-old person would, depart from this world. So I reposted these properties that this gentleman was going to buy, and one of them has had fire damage even before I bought it. Okay, so I posted all the
Uh-huh.
pictures, and because I believe in transparency, people can make an offer based on what they see and what the market will bear. Well, one person that does not know me from Adam, never met this person, they post under my picture that this is a meth house. Oh, look at that meth house. Okay. Now, of course, I had to
Right.
push back on that, but other people sent me some crazy private messages. And again, I'm just an investor trying to sell real estate. You don't know me, but you think you can. And I had in my posts mentioned that these properties were under contract, but the person died. Someone actually private messaged me saying that I was lying just to get attention to sell these
Oh,
houses. Well, I
exactly.
literally, I reported both of them to Facebook as harassment and bullying, because that's what harassment and bullying is, especially when you don't know folk and you're going to go and say, hateful or untruthful, things, about them. But there have been times when I've just gone off social media totally just for mental health reasons. I don't do Twitter at all. I stay away from that whole platform
Neither do
because
I.
it seems like people just want to just say any kind of crazy thing. And then, you start getting these reactions or whatnot. So I'm like, nah, I'll stay away from that. I mean, literally, for mental health reasons, there's certain platforms I don't have anything to do with.
Exactly. Well, I think I told you before we jumped on the call that I find myself pulling further and further away. Like Facebook, I've really reduced my list of friends and more pulling away from it. Because for mental health reasons, right? I'd rather just get on a phone and talk to a friend or kind of go old school at
Yeah,
this point
I
that I
think
have to
too,
protect
another,
myself.
I guess, related topic
And
to this, and I know you and I have talked about this, is that, I mean, what percentage of your Facebook friends are really your friends?
not many. Yeah, I literally went through it last week and just started reducing to a handful. And then my closest friends really don't do Facebook. Some, maybe one or two, right? And I think it was really intriguing at first. And, I think about Facebook like back in the day when we lived in Germany back in the 60s and 70s. And you didn't have Facebook, you had written letters. And boy, what a great tool that would have been, right, back then to stay in contact with your relatives and your friends stateside. So I liked that side of it, but now I'm just like, huh.
Yes.
And now it's called what, Meta? Is that the name of the
Whatever
company?
it is, that is about. But there are, good things that have come out of, just from a mental health standpoint. There are some really good psychologists out there that are posting good stuff. One that I like and follow on Instagram is Dr. Caroline Leaf, just giving her a shout out, right now. She has a podcast of her own, but her daily posts on mental health issues, and especially in the whole topic of establishing, healthy boundaries. Is I was at in my younger version, I could almost get burned out because I didn't know how to say no to people. I would always, someone, oh, can you be on this committee? Can you do this thing? Can you do that thing? Okay, 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 okay. And then I had zero time, for myself. Okay. And then when I first started my legal practice too, I was so immersed in work, and that, there was no time for me to even go to the gym or do physical I'd be working till 9 and 10 at night, and so I had to create and carve out this, work-life balance for myself. And for me, when I go to the gym, it's not necessary. I mean, it is very important. It's about me having good physical health, but that is my mental health break. Okay. Because I can be dealing with some real heavy stuff as a criminal lawyer. We're dealing with murder trials, and we're, getting ready to, present evidence. And I'm, reading, ballistics. I'm reading, looking at autopsy photos, and all of it.
Yeah.
I have to watch police body cam daily. If some child has been, molested, and we have these forensic interviews that people who are trained to interview children, well, we have to watch and listen to, the child in these, settings. And so just on a daily basis, just by the nature, and trust me, if you're a defense lawyer and you're about to defend the person accused, you have to watch all that stuff too, because how else can you prepare your defense? So,
So, Lynette, I think we've talked about this before. As far as lawyers, I think you mentioned on a previous call that the suicide rate is.
I think
Do they have the
physicians,
highest
ironically,
suicide rate in the
do,
country?
but
Physicians?
lawyers definitely
Okay.
have a higher than the national average of suicides. And like I said, I just in the
Mm-hmm.
San Antonio Bar Association, friends that I did trials with, there were two suicides of people I personally knew that were both younger than me. Okay. And so, and I was so,
Yeah.
and it kind of, it messed me up. I just felt so bad for, the families. Both of them were parents with young children, and were phenomenal lawyers. I mean, it's like, this is the big thing about mental health, is that you have these people that you see in your jobs, in the community or whatever, but you have no idea as to whatever private struggle, torment that they may be going through behind closed doors. And so I'm just a big believer. We just have to assume that everybody has got some kind of struggle. And so let's try to be a little kind, to people, and and spread a little tenderness here, as we interact with one another in our workplaces, on social media, and everywhere else that we interact, with individuals. But it's very, very important. And I know in all of the bar associations all across America that there is usually a number that lawyers can call, like in Texas is the Texas Lawyer Assistance Program. Arkansas, all the 50 states have something similar, that if you are feeling stressed out in the profession, you're dealing with mental health issues, drinking problems, drug abuse, whatever your issue may be, there is that number you can call. And in many states, at least for the lawyers, that number is on the back of your bar card that you can call to get support. And at least within my field, I highly encourage those. And so when we had those suicides, and I was very active in the San Antonio Black Lawyers Association, we actually had a whole CLE session on mental health for lawyers for a monthly program, and it was packed. I mean, there was not an empty seat. And one of the lawyers that was the main lawyer speaking at it was someone who talked about how he literally had the noose around his neck, and all he needed to do was take one step off the chair.
Yeah.
And he didn't take that step. He got the assistance from the Texas Lawyer Assistance Program. And, he talked about how all the things he's gained through the years, not the least of which being able to give his daughter away in marriage. And when I think of where I was in 2006 and all the things that I have today that I would have missed out on if I had, basically jumped off the ledge, those are the things I bask in, knowing that I've witnessed, one child already graduate from college, another one's about to go to college. I met my husband, over these last 16 years. I mean, there's just so much. I became a lawyer, all the positive things. So
Right.
The bottom line for me is reach out to somebody, whether it's a coworker, a friend, a pastor, just reach out to somebody and start there and see where you go, because you matter and you are valuable and your work on this earth is not through yet. So with that, let's leave it at that. Okay.
Yeah. Let's leave it at that.
And so this has been yet another great conversation that we're letting the world listen in on, but this is how we talk. And we look forward to yet another continuing this conversation that began in 1976 and continues to this day. This is Permanent Change of Station.
You've been listening to Permanent Change of Station. Tune in each week for the latest episode on Apple Podcasts or wherever you find your podcasts. And while you're there, be sure to rate, subscribe, and leave a review. Join us online at pcspodcast.live and on our social media platforms. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.